first session. It's daunting to give the last talk just before lunch, so I'll try to keep the pace fairly brisk. I'm going to talk about analyzing the research strengths in ASEAN countries, and essentially we'll be looking at benchmarking as well as analyzing research trends. It's very important to look at the trends because a lot has been happening within the last 5 years or so, and there are some surprising trends in there. This work is part of a broader initiative on research performance evaluation that I've been conducting throughout the Asia-Pacific region, working with government research funding agencies as well as universities. It's also linked to a new initiative to produce an Asian university research rating system. Now, I'm going to give you an overview and a sample of some of the analyses that I presented at the beginning of this month at the ASEAN cost meetings in Singapore. There I analyzed the research areas associated with 5 of the thematic subcommittees of ASEAN cost, and they were renewable energy, biotech, materials science and technology, food science and technology, and microelectronics and information technology. And we looked at each of those areas and then drilled down into 2 or 3 sub-areas under those. The analyses were about 150 pages, and I promise I won't cover all page for you. Now, the analyses that we'll be looking at will be, as I said, to identify research trends. It's important to know, is the research activity increasing or decreasing? What are the rates of growth? We will look at benchmarking ASEAN's research performance as a whole, treating ASEAN as one geopolitical unit against China, Japan, South Korea, and Taiwan. Again, this is just a sample of what can be done to illustrate. One can, of course, include other countries. And then we'll look inside ASEAN and compare the strengths of the 10 ASEAN member countries, and then go down further and identify the top institutions within ASEAN, the top research institutes and universities that are driving the research, and finally go down to the lowest level and look at the individual researchers who are driving the research. Now, important to emphasize that these analyses are driven by the policy needs. Lots of analyses one can perform. It's important to be aware of what the policy issues and policy options are that various governments are considering. So the design of these analyses has very much been driven through the conversations I've had with the various government funding agencies in a number of countries within Asia. All of the analyses I'll show you are bibliometric analyses. They're done using the information in the Scopus database. Scopus is a product produced by Elsevier. It happens to be the largest citation and abstract database in the world. And it's interesting for use in looking at ASEAN countries because it also includes local journals, even journals that are in local languages, as long as the abstracts are in English, and as long as they conform to the quality standards of the Independent Content Advisory Board. Now, I just want to explain a little bit about the methodology. We call this a dual hierarchy approach. We have one hierarchy which is geographical or physical, and what this allows us to do is look at geopolitical units like ASEAN. We can break that out into countries. We can then go down to the university level, and finally all the way down to the individual level. At the same time, we have a second independent or orthogonal hierarchy, which is conceptual. It's the subject areas. So we can look at broad areas like engineering, look at energy, look at renewable energy, focus in perhaps on an area like biofuels or solar energy, and even into very focused niche areas like photovoltaic energy. This is quite important because it allows you to analyze the breadth and the depth of research strength in countries and universities, and it allows you to identify complementarities. And as we'll see, a country may not be so strong in a broad area, but it may have great strength in certain niche areas. And it's important to understand where those niche strengths are so we can knit together networks of excellence among the countries. Now, you look at a term like, or a field like renewable energy, solar energy, these areas are of course not predefined categories within any database. So to select these out, we need to use keywords. And this is just showing you the keyword query that is associated with the renewable energy field. So we generate these queries, and this will then match against articles in the database and select out those articles that are relevant to or that fall within the area of renewable energy. The nice thing about this technique is that it's extremely flexible. We can define a keyword query for any interdisciplinary or very highly focused niche area one might care to define. The other important thing here is that different people may define fields differently. One government might choose to define a field more narrowly, another more broadly. This kind of technique can accommodate that. So let's look at renewable energy globally. It's important to understand what's happening globally as kind of a baseline. So you can see from 2000 through 2008, there was about a 91% increase in publications in renewable energy, and this is all publications worldwide. Now in this graph, and all of the graphs I'll show you, I'm showing time using a 5-year sliding window. You see 2000 through 4, 1 through 5, 2 through 6, and so on. And the reason we do that is simply to smooth the curves. Because if you go year by year, they jump around and you can't see the trends quite so clearly. So 91% increase in publications. Now let's look at what's happening with ASEAN relative to the benchmarking set of countries. And we can see first of all, a market share analysis, and that's shown in these pie charts. And market share is important to analyze because that shows you the relative standing of a country in a very quantitative way. And market share, of course, represents the presence of a country in terms of research. And so you can see here that in terms of publications, China has the largest market share over the period 2000 through 2008, followed by Japan. In terms of citations measuring the impact or quality of the work, Japan has a larger market share than China. But you can see if you look at the graphs over time, it's actually quite dynamic. You will see tremendous growth in China in publications in recent years, overtaking Japan now by quite a wide margin. And that's followed by South Korea, and then ASEAN, and then Taiwan. If we look at citations, it's a bit different. Again, very strong growth in China, approaching Japan, but not quite there yet. But you can, of course, extrapolate and you can see what's likely to happen. And that is then followed also again by South Korea and ASEAN and Taiwan. Now, when you look at these graphs, the lines for, say, South Korea, ASEAN, and Taiwan, they look quite flat. And that's somewhat deceptive. And the reason is that the numbers are so large for China and Japan. So it's interesting to look at this in terms of growth rates. If we look at growth rates, the picture looks quite different. And again, we compare to the 91% growth rate globally. If we look at citations, you see even higher growth rates. ASEAN showing about 350% growth rate over that period in citations. So very, very healthy growth within ASEAN as a whole. But let's take a look inside ASEAN and see what are the countries that are driving this growth. And here you see the market share analyses as well as the actual numbers of publications and citations. And interestingly, you see within renewable energy that Thailand is leading within ASEAN. And that is followed by Malaysia and Singapore. And you can't quite see Malaysia because the two lines are right on top of one another. They have essentially the same number or volume of publications. If you look at citations, it's a little bit different picture. Singapore is ahead, but no longer by very much. Look at that enormous spurt of growth recently within Thailand, catching up to Singapore. You also see strong growth in Malaysia, but at about half the number of citations of Thailand. We can go down to the university level, and let's just look inside Singapore and ask what are the universities that are driving this. And again, an interesting trend. You see Nanyang has the highest publication volume, has a very high growth rate recently, followed by NUS, National University of Singapore. In terms of citations, they're both approximately equal now. And this kind of pattern you see in a number of countries. You see this in Thailand as well, that the strongest growth is not in the flagship universities generally. It's in the second-tier universities. So this trend, I think, is fine if you take ASEAN as a whole. So I think it shows the strength that can be gained by collaboration within ASEAN. So one thing that this implies is the need to establish stronger mechanisms for ASEAN countries to collaborate in research.